Hi everybody, Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today I've got Rebecca Homkes, and what we're going to be doing is talking about her book, Survive, Reset and Thrive, Leading Breakthrough Growth in Volatile Times. Rebecca, where can people find you?
Thanks so much, Tim, first of all, for having me. They can find me directly at RebeccaHomkes.com or the book website, SurviveResetThrive.com.
Wow, what a book!
Yeah.
I'm,
Well, I'm
I
just
mean,
delighted that you got a
I'm,
chance to read it. Yes.
I'm. It is a great book.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed it. I mean, for me, it's kind of like up there with In Search of Excellence and From Good to Great and things like that. I mean, it is a great leadership book.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah.
It's and it's not full of the cliches that you normally expect in leadership books.
No, I try to avoid all those. I work with entrepreneurs trying to get stuff done in crazy times. So you've got to cut right to it and give them the truth. Yeah.
Because I read one recently, which was like all of the examples were all of the case studies that you get in an MBA. But you've not used. I don't think. I think all of the examples that you used were fresh ones. It was just awesome. So let's get in. And what was the inspiration behind the book?
Yeah, what's funny about this book is a lot of the frameworks and the tools and the playbooks, Tim, I've been using for 15 years and doing it directly with companies, right? But what happened after COVID was it really started to crystallize the framework, because what really struck me in 2020 was conversations, first of all, here in the UK were very similar to we had in 2016 with Brexit or 2022 with the Russia-Ukraine war, is you would be speaking to CEOs and they would have the same conversation. They would say, why me? Why now? Right? I had such a great strategy. I'd finally built the team, engagement was high, and now I've got a crisis. It's not fair. And it struck me, if we want to call ourselves entrepreneurs, you need to be able to grow a company through every time, not just the good times, but also not just the bad times. And second, why are we letting the market conditions dictate whether or not it's a great time to grow? And let's build a playbook that builds this robust growth through everything. You got to stabilize because the market's going to throw shocks at you, reset and change, which is a critical element, and then go back to being a Thrive company again. So it was having conversations with companies during that kind of tumultuous period of 2020 and then in the several years since then.
Yeah, and there's a lot of books that kind of tell you what you're going to do is if you do all of these things, you're going to be great.
Yes.
But I think that you're far more honest in terms of saying that it's not a case of just doing the same thing you're doing or trying to do the same thing you're doing but better. So just talk us through again, because you'd call the book Survive, Reset and Thrive. Explain to us what you mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to sound cliche, so I'll say it, then we'll explain. Is the whole notion of leading growth journeys when times are uncertain is moving from what I call linear thinking to loop thinking. As leaders, we love a good checklist, right? We love a good planning tool. We love a good template. And unfortunately, those tools and frameworks aren't set up for a changing world. We need to embrace this loop thinking where we're constantly cycling through a loop of survive, which is stabilized when you get market shocks. Those shocks could be external, like a war or a COVID or an interest rate spike. They could be internal, like losing a major customer or losing a major investor. You got to stabilize the system. You've got to reset, which is a power move or change because the situation's changed. Then you can go back to being this consistent and sustainable, high performing company. And the trap a lot of organizations make is they see two dimensions: survive and thrive. So we got to get through the recession or the downturn and then go back to thriving again. And the reality is this constant loop. And as soon as you embrace the loop, that you can be and thrive and have to go back to stabilize, it actually is a very empowering for both you and your team to move back to that thrive stage even faster.
You talk about survive is about there's a certain amount of proactive stabilization
Yes.
of the organization. Talk us through that.
Absolutely. Good survive is proactive survive. I don't use the R word, which means recession, but we won't use it again because, again, that's looking for an excuse of why things aren't going well. Great thrive organizations have this robustness. They're always set up to thrive. And I think of it like taking it a punch. We can't stop the market from punching us, but we can get better and better at taking them. And so you do proactive survive by getting your basics in place, which I call the 4 C's, or cash, cost, customers, and communication. But there's nothing strategic about the basics. You also have to have these power moves in play, like being able to quickly repurpose and partner when there's a change in the system, like really leaning into learning velocity, not just being quote unquote customer centric, but building deep moats around your customer. And organizations that employ not just to survive basics, but these power moves, when there are system shocks, they move out of that phase more quickly than everyone else. And if you've ever been in kind of a murky gray or downturn period and looked around and see a couple companies that already seem to be thriving, that's why, because they already had all of this in place. They could quickly restabilize, reset, and then they're back to thrive while everyone else is still scrambling.
Yeah, I mean, every company says they're customer focused.
Everyone does. Very few are. Yes.
And when you ask them what that means, it's usually something about they'll talk about something to do with how they sell. It's like selling has nothing to do with being customer focused.
Yes.
It's the opposite of customer focus.
Customer, if you can't put in your customers' words why you matter to them and you put it in your words, you're not customer focused. And
Yeah.
there's real power in being able to do that. And frankly, Tim, we've lost the customer in strategy. We have 5,000 strategy template planning tools. Most of them are completely devoid of insights and the customer. I am desperately begging organizations to put their customer back into their strategy, especially if they want to lead a growth journey.
Yes, we could go on talking about that. You talk in the book about playing offensive and defensive at the same time. What do you mean? Because usually what happens is we're either doing one or the other, aren't we?
Yeah, we're either doing one or the other, or actually we're asking our team to do both. And a colleague of mine and a client written about in the book likened it to asking his team a football pitch, right? Is that if you're asking your team to play offense and defense at the same time, the same team members, it's exhausting. Imagine not having an assigned position, but running up and down the pitch the entire time. And what he found kind of in the 2020-21 period, which other companies are finding now, is that our mind share isn't very good at that. Because if you're not convinced we're going to move out of survive mode, everything is going to want to take you back there. So a lot of organizations split their team into two: a defense team and an offense team, or survive team and a reset team. The survive team works on the basics, all these cash, cost, customers aspects. The reset team starts looking for the growth insights and what we're going to do next. And both team is just empowered to have this single focused mind share on their role, with full trust that their colleagues in the other team are doing their role as well. And it was a real empowerment and trust. And I have to have trust for this to work, which allows organizations to move much faster out of this phase into the other ones.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I like about the book is the fact that you actually talk about some what I would see is actually quite controversial subjects.
Okay, tell me. Yeah.
Well, you talk about laying people off.
Yeah. Which
which is something that leadership books sometimes don't go and talk about at all. But you actually go through the process of saying, yeah, you may have to do that. And then you're actually talking about, okay, so if you're going to cut, how far do you cut?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't always protect jobs, but we can protect people, right? And there's a real lesson of thinking about that is in a major reset, or what I call a hard reset, you will have talented team members who are no longer part of your future value creating journey because their skill sets and capabilities are best fit for another organization. Your role as a leader is to repurpose them and help them on their next journey and make sure your organization is fit for the purpose that it currently has right now. And we have many models of organizations who have done this very well. We have a lot of models of organizations who are not doing this very well. But bringing everyone on the team with you, I often say to leaders, and it's going to sound harsh, if you have patience on the people, you have patience on the results, right? So if we're always waiting those couple more months, you're by default sharing with your team, I'm also patient on the results. And if you're impatient about the growth results, then we need to be similarly impatient once we've made some decisions on the team members. And I push us so far as to say, if you're really serious about a breakthrough growth journey, which not everyone is nor should be, then consider hiring only two types of roles. What I call a very specific tour of duty. Like this individual is going to come in for a very specific skill set. Maybe it could be building our AI foundation, could be getting our CRM in place, or someone who's repurposable. So as we repurpose how we create value, this organization can. And if you can't put a team member into one of those two camps, really question what role they might have on your growth team going forward.
Yeah, I think that quite often we still kind of hark back to the jobs for life when we take people
Yes.
on, rather than necessarily thinking that the person is going to come in and do a particular role. And it may be that what we're going to do is we're going to train them up to leave. I mean, they will leave of their own natural accord. It's done in sports.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, Netflix wrote this playbook over a decade ago when they said, we're not a family, right? And we're not going to pride ourselves on being a family. We're a sports team. We will take care of each other, cheer each other on, support, build a capability. But times certain players need to go to another team. And again, I want to emphasize this is not to be heartless. And there's many examples in America right now where this is being done horribly. But this is about being very honest with your team and the capability that you need, and then taking care of people who no longer need to be part of your team.
So let's talk about reset.
Yes.
So we've talked about survive. So what do you mean by reset? And you also talk about the right to win. What do you mean by that?
Yes. Reset means change. And reset is a big, bold, powerful word if you let it be. And what's funny, Tim, is something CEOs often ask me is they say, we'd love to do Survive, Reset, Thrive, love the book. However, do you mind if we don't use the word reset? Could we call it something softer or lighter? Because we don't want to scare the team. Let's call it like a reframe or a revisit. And I often joke, like reglance over, right? It's like, no, call it what it is, right? We set strategies in a changing world. The weird thing about strategy is you're signing up for a 3-year commitment on the day you know the least about the world. Think about that, right? 2 weeks in, we already know more. We are setting these things up and we know they're going to change. So let's start with that mentality. And when the situation changes, we change how we're doing it. So reset means change. And one of the most powerful pieces of your reset is a really harsh look at your right to win. A lot of strategies talk about right to win, the whole like playing to win. We've gotten super, super lazy about this. If you think about having a right to win, there's only 3 ways. You as an organization have something others don't. You as an organization can do things others cannot, or you can build a moat or fences around your advantage. And that's really tough if you think about it. What truly does my company have others don't? Or what can I do that others can't? Or do I actually know how to build moats? And what I'm seeing, Tim, is A, again, we're lazy about it. B, we articulate the same stuff, engaged team, X years of experience, customer centric. But the scariest thing is right to win changes a lot faster than it used to. You might be able to build competitive advantage that lasted for a decade. Now you sometimes don't even get a strategy cycle. And we're seeing this in the world around us from some of these AI model competitors. It's incredibly difficult to build moats in today's world. And so you should be super focused on how you're going to do it as an organization.
Yeah, and we've been seeing it for the last 10 years with software as a service, where
Absolutely.
in effect products are being built and they expect to sell it and then actually to be replaced by the competition. It's a
Absolutely. And we saw how difficult it was to build moats in that industry. First, having a SaaS model was moats. That quickly became repeated away. And the more frictionless you make your service, the more easy it is for someone to replace you with another one that comes in next.
You talk about insight and action. So how do we move from insight to action?
So you take these critical insights from the strategy, right? And so that's your critical beliefs, your right to win, and then the finish line, right? Finish lines still matter. We might be facing a lot of uncertainty and volatility in certain industries, but growth strategies still need a finish line to align the team on where we're going. And from those, articulate to that short list of top priorities. Now, most organizations claim they have a short list of objectives. What they really have is 5 objectives with 5 subpoints, each of which have 10 index bullet points in, each of which have 5 KPIs under that, and then their OKR dashboard tracker, right? We've seen all of these things. Growth is about being ruthlessly prioritizing just a few things, but there's a catch. You want ruthless prioritization and the capability of adaptability. Why we struggle with prioritization is every leader is paranoid about getting it wrong, Tim. They're concerned that he or she is finally going to give that short list of priorities and they left out one of those big insights. So we keep adding more and more things in to kind of cover our ground. That's not breakthrough growth. Growth is saying these are the 3 to 5 key priorities that will really lead this growth journey based on our current beliefs, but we're going to be stress testing those beliefs. And by the way, if we need to change, we're going to drop one of those and replace it with something else. So it's prioritization with adaptability. You need that 1-2 punch, not just one or the other.
Yeah, it was interesting how you were talking about And all the way through the book, you're kind of saying it's not about either or, it's both.
Yes, yes. You're breaking a lot of tensions, right? High growth is about breaking tensions. High alignment and adaptability work together. Prioritization and the capability to change work together. We need to stop thinking I can do X or I can do Y. It's when you put them together and break that tension, that's when the real order of magnitude value creation gains happen.
Mm. So you talk in the book again, another one of these things where you've got destinations and directions. Talk
Yes.
to us about that.
Absolutely. And this goes back to the finish line is that it's easy to say, well, Rebecca, if we're facing a lot of uncertainty, should we even set a finish line, right? That feels like it's not right. I don't want to pre-commit to the wrong place. And I totally get that. But we need to align the team on what we're doing and where we're going. And occasionally we need a destination. We need a very fixed point where we're saying, by the end of 2027, this is our revenue, our turnover, our margin, where we're going to look in these products. That's sometimes what you need as a company, especially if you have a big shareholder event. But when you're facing extreme uncertainty or disruptive innovation in your space, or you're shifting business models, destinations can prematurely anchor you in the wrong place. You instead need a direction. And I liken it to exploring the Old West in America. Think of the difference between, go west, young man, versus take exit 405 for Santa Monica. In the 1850s, go west was the right charge. I knew I was going northwest, and I got clearer and clearer on it as I explored. If I'd prematurely send everyone to Santa Monica, we would have missed all the gold that was a little bit farther north in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and you point that out in the book about the fact that Go West, Young Man was an objective. It was, you're basically, but it's still a very wide objective.
And I got, as we executed and as we learned, or as we explored in the 1800s, as we explored or learned, we got clearer and tighter about what we were trying to do and what it would take. So you don't keep these directions forever. As you execute and learn, you get closer to these destinations. But it gives you, again, that capability of adaptability to learn as we go, because learning is the critical underlying of all of these things. To do survive, reset, thrive, you've got to have learning velocity as an organization.
You also talk in the book about MWB.
Yes.
Must win battles.
Yes. Now,
Talk to us about that.
I'm agnostic to the term that you decide to use, right? Whatever term works in your organization, I say keep it. What I'm not agnostic to is that there's one term. I always say you can pick one term. It doesn't have to be must win battles. That's a term I prefer. But whatever term you pick, it's now locked. Whether it's objectives or priorities or goals, that can refer to one thing and one thing only. And that's the big list of needle moving priorities. So must win battles are clear, actionable, midterm, and critically, Tim, they cut across functions, departments, or units. And that's actually a really good test of your strategic objectives. If you look at your list of objectives and you've basically renamed your functions, so you have a marketing objective, a sales objective, and a product objective, and a people objective, that's not strategy. You've just color coded your organizational chart in a slightly different way. Strategy and these objectives should cut across departments and functions, because that's where really, again, that value creation gains lie.
Mm-hmm. So if I was a leader and I was going to ask, set up must-win battles,
Yes.
what sort of things would I be setting my team?
You're starting with your finish line, where you want to be at the end of the 3 years of the cycle, based on your beliefs and your right to win. And then you're looking for a list of between 3 and 5 very clear 2 to 3 year critical priorities, again, that cut across your organization. They should be directly linked to value creation, right? Which obviously is touching a customer or dramatically increasing productivity or efficiency, and true needle movers. If you go back to the notion of must wins, what are those big hills on the field versus just the everyday marching? And critically, these must-win battles are fundamentally unbalanced. Growing through uncertainty is fundamentally unbalanced. Balanced scorecards don't have a role to play in growth strategy in volatile times, because they tell us to allocate resource in the same way across time. No, this is unbalanced time. A few things are going to matter more than the next few years. And let me just say, Tim, this is a struggle. And part of the reason it's hard to truly set must-win battles is we're worried about fairness. And we want every team or function or department to see themselves in the strategy. We've got to break that tension. As leaders, we need to be able to communicate all of our employees are equally valued. But when it comes to strategy, just a few things matter more than other things at different points in time.
Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book. Survive, Reset, Thrive, Leading Breakthrough Growth Strategy in Volatile Times. It's a fantastic book.
Thank you, Tim.
And if I was going to buy one, where can I get one from?
So anywhere that you buy books, so amazon.co.uk or amazon.com, or if you go to surviveresetthrive.com, I'll link you to other places to buy it as well.
Okay. And where can we find you?
And again, you can find me at RebeccaHomkes.com or surviveresetthrive.com.
Excellent. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for writing the book. It's a fantastic leadership book. I'm, as you can tell, I'm really impressed with it. I was quite wowed about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on and talking today.